Hello and welcome to this video tutorial on how to make Pong in Scratch. So we're making the classic Pong game. Here we have two players. One is controlled by the human player and then one is controlled by the computer. The human player moves as I move the mouse, and the computer just tracks through to where it thinks the ball's going to be. And we've got a score up at the top here. Yes, 3-0. Okay, so first thing we need to do is we need to go to Scratch and click on Scratch. Once we're on Scratch, click on Create. If you haven't done already, when it comes up with the Scratch edit screen, then you're going to want to log in to Scratch by clicking in the top right hand corner. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of Scratch the cat. So right click on him and delete him. Goodbye Scratch. And let's rename our game to Pong. There we go. So we're going to want to have our stage the traditional colour. So we click on Stage, Backdrops, and let's select the fill and let's fill it with black. So the background colour is all black. So we're ready. There we go. And once we're done, there's all our stage. It's nice and black. And if we click on the sprites, let's create some new sprites. We'll click on the square, the rectangle, and we'll have a white paddle. And oh, that's no good. Let's click back on our square. Let's undo that. Undo. There we go. A quick way of doing undo is Control Z. So, and we'll click on this square here because that's the solid one. You can't really see it, but if I change the colour, you can see we've got a square, a rectangle here with a hole in the middle, or a solid rectangle. We're going to have a solid rectangle and do about that big. That should do it. There we go. And we click off onto the stage, and there we go. We've got a nice rectangle there. That's good. Once we've done that, that's all okay. It's a little bit big, so we're going to use the shrink button and we'll make it a bit smaller. That's about fair. That's a good size. There we go. So we created our player bat there, and let's rename it to player bat. It's always a good idea. You don't have to rename your sprites, but it's a good idea when you start creating games that have got lots of sprites in. Then rename them to something sensible. That way you won't lose track. Now we've created the player bat. It's only fair that we have a computer bat of the same size. So let's click on the player bat and let's duplicate it. Right click, duplicate. There we go. And let's move the computer bat over to the right hand side. That's all okay. So now we've got two bats in our game, which is all very well and good. So let's start by let's get it so that we can move our player bat. So in order to move the player bat, we go to when start clicked, and let's repeat forever, and we will change the Y coordinate. The Y coordinate, if you look here, the Y coordinate controls how far up and down on the screen you go. So right at the top of the screen is Y 180, and right at the bottom of the screen is Y minus 180. In the middle is 0, about there. And the same goes with X. X starts on the left, and it goes across from minus 240 this time, through to 0 in the middle, and then right on the right hand side is 240. So what we're going to say is when we click, when start is clicked, forever, and we're going to change, we're going to set Y to, we go to sensing, and we'll get the Y coordinate of the mouse. So wherever the mouse is, we're going to set our Y of our player bat to the same. So if we click start, there we go. And now you can see wherever we move it up and down, it will move to the same place. That's all very good. Okay. So we've got a player bat. Let's just move him back down to the bottom. We've got a player bat and we've got a computer bat. What we need now, let's save the code of the computer bat for a little bit. Let's get ourselves a ball. So click on paint a new sprite, And let's click on the circle or the ellipse, and let's just create ourselves a nice little round ball. Don't worry if it's too big. You can always change the size of it, but that's probably about right. And we want it to start in the center. So we want our ball to start in the center. Well, let's get that. So when start clicked, let's set that to the center. There we go. There we go. So at the start of the game, when the ball starts to move, at the start of the game, we put the ball right in the center of the screen. There we go. So now what we want to do is we can get our player bat moving. It moves okay. The ball goes to the center of the screen. So now what we do is at the start of the game, we want to get the ball moving. So where's it going to go? Well, a good idea is to get it moving in a random direction. So let's get it going in a random direction. So there's our ball. After start, click there, and let's get it to move, point in a direction, and it's going to need to be random. So we use here in the green one, pick a random, and it's going to go in a random direction. 0 is here, I think, and then it goes right round 90, 180, 270, 360. So we're going to need to go somewhere between 0 and 360 degrees. So that now, when we click it, it will make it point in a random direction, and we can just get it to move along. And we're going to move 4 steps at a time, and we'll put a repeat forever. So what this means now is we go to the middle, we change to a random direction, and then we get it moving constantly at 4 steps. So let's see how far that goes. There we go, good. And if I press it again, yeah, it's starting to move in a random direction. But at the moment, whenever it hits the side, the top or the bottom, it doesn't bounce. It just sort of slides along. That's no good. So what we want to say is if on edge, bounce. There we go. So now, whenever it hits the edge, it's going to bounce back, hopefully. Nope. Oh, that's why. We've got to put that if inside of there. Let's have a look. Put the if inside of the forever loop. The reason being is it'll only check it. If we put it up here, if we put that if statement here, it will only check it the once, the first time when you press start. So it will start the game, set him here, go to there, right in the center, point in my direction, and then it'll ask, is it on the edge? If it is, it'll bounce. But you need to keep on checking, so it needs to go inside the game loop. And hopefully this time, there we go. So now we've got a ball that's starting to bounce off from top to bottom and bounce about. Excellent, good stuff. But as you can see at the moment, it's still a bit boring because our paddles don't work. So the next thing we're going to do is we want to get our computer bat. So let's rename that. Computer bat. And we're going to take our renamed computer bat and we're going to get it so that wherever the ball is, whether it's here or here or here or here or here, we want the Y coordinate of our computer bat to follow it, to try and track it. So we click on the computer bat, and when we press start, forever, because we want it to keep on checking. There we go. If, let's have a look. There we go. If our Y coordinate, which of our bat here should be on here, our Y position. If our Y position is greater than the ball's Y position, we want to move it down. So let's have a look. Can we find a ball Y position? Let's have a look. There we go. So you can see it here. We can choose the Y position of Sprite 1. Now already you can see this is why we start to rename our sprites. Because I've been lazy. I've not renamed my Sprite 1 to ball, and because of that, it's getting a bit confusing. If we change that now, and look, Y position of ball, there we go. So, if our Y position of our bat is bigger than the Y position of the ball, then we need to move it down, because if we're here and the ball's here, we need to move it down. So what we'll do is we'll change our y by, let's go -4 at a time. Good, there we go. And now if we're above it, it will try and move down. There we go. You see it's moving automatically. And we just need to do the same for the x position. So let's have a look. Oh, sorry, not the x position. For the y position, if our bat is lower down, so if our ball is up here and our bat is down here, we need to move it up. And it's just the opposite of what we did before. So there's our bat. If our, let's make that a bit bigger. If our y position, let's have a look, is less than, and this one's the less than, if our y position is less than the y position of the ball, oops. If our y position is less than the y position of the ball, there we go, then we need to change it by +4, so that will move it up. Let's have a look. +4. There we go. So now if we run it, let's see if that works. Ours is moving up and down as with the mouse, and as you can see, the bat, it tracks that same y position of the ball. There we go, good stuff. Good. So we're getting somewhere closer to a working game, but at the moment it's still not, we're still not bouncing back. So how do we do that? Well, this is where we've got to put quite a bit of code into our bat. And what we need to say is, if we are touching, where we are, let's have a look. If we are touching the computer, let's do the player bat first. If we're touching the player bat, then what we need to do is we need to get the ball and it needs to go in the opposite direction, thereabouts. So how do we do that? Well, we use a little bit of maths. And we say, if the ball's direction, where's our direction? If the ball's direction is less than 180, so let's say our ball's direction is 90, then we want to double it, we want to go the opposite side of the circle, which is you need to add on 180. So if our direction is less than 180, then we set our direction to 180 in the other way. So let's have a look. There we go. Point in direction, and we're going to get whatever our direction is, and we're going to add 180. So here, if our direction is 90, we're going to add 180, which means it's going to go from 90 to 270. And you can do the same with the other side, but this time we do if our direction is greater than 180, if our direction is greater than 180, then this time we do whatever our direction is minus 180. So point in direction, whatever the direction it is, minus 180. So if our direction was this time 300, it would go down to 90. Is that right? No, 120. 300, 120, 120. There we go. So let's see if that works. Let's see if that goes anywhere. Let's see if that goes anywhere. Oops. Let's just reset that. Hopefully if it touches our player bats. Ooh, okay. So we've already got our first issue here. What's happening is, as soon as it touches it, it points in the other direction, but then the next time it goes through the loop, it's probably still stuck in that bat. So we need to give it a bit of a nudge. And let's just get it to move 4 steps out of the way. So hopefully this time now, when it hits it, it will bounce and it will nudge out of the way rather than keep dancing a bit weird. Let's have a look. Nope, still going. If it's doing that, then one thing to check is if you click on the costumes, there's my ball. Make sure that wherever you've done your bat, which is there, make sure it's dead center. Make sure this arrow, you need to make sure the center of the sprite, there you are, is dead center. That's fine on that one. Let's go to the player bat. And there you go. See, it wasn't dead center. And what's happening there is, because it's not dead center, when it turns that bat round, when it turns the ball back round, it's obviously just catching it a bit. Let's try that now. There we go. There we go. So just make sure that you've done that. Let's do that on this one as well. Let's click on the computer bat and make sure again it's not quite dead center. So let's centralize it. There, that's about dead center. That should be fine. So there we go. So we are ball. We've said if we are touching the player bat, then change the direction back 180. Good. And at the moment though, it still doesn't do anything when it goes. It still goes straight through the other bat. So what do? Well, we could, if we wanted, just duplicate this code and type it all over again, but changing touching player bat with touching the computer bat. But we've got to be a little bit cleverer because we want to be a bit lazier. We can use something that's called an OR block here. And this time we can say if we're touching the player bat or we're touching the computer bat, then it will go back in the other direction. So let's have a look. There we go. Perfect. So now if we do it, we start to get our game and it starts to resemble the Pong game. But there's a couple of improvements. At the moment this game's a bit boring. And the reason it's a bit boring is that it always goes at the same speed. This ball's never going to speed up. Most computer games get harder as the game goes on. So what I'm going to say this time is we're going to start to spice things up. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to create a variable. And the variable is called ball speed. There we go. And here, our ball speed, we're going to set it, oh, there's 4, 4, 4. So we'll set our ball speed to 4, which is good. And anywhere where you've got the speed of 4, where it's moving 4 steps, let's just swap that from 4 steps to the ball speed. So this time, anytime where it goes to look at how many steps it needs to move, it will go and ask the ball speed what number is stored inside it, that variable. These are really quite clever. So there we go. And which is good. See, it's still working at that 4 speed 4. But what we can do now is we can say, okay, whenever we touch a player bat or a computer bat, let's increase the ball speed by 1. There we go. So anytime you hit that bat or that bat, it will speed up. And when we start the game, if you watch this variable, you'll see every time it hits one of those bats, it'll increase by 1. Let's get it moving over the right way. There you go. We've gone to 5, 6, 7. And already you can start to see that the game speed is starting to speed up. But there's a problem. If you notice here, this is going to get a bit boring. If I just go here, I don't have to move my bat. And the reason being is that every time it hits the bat, it just moves back to the same position. So we want to make it a little bit more clever. Now, we could, if we wanted, we could say that when it bounces up here, it goes off on an angle like that. If it hits straight, then it will come straight back. If it hits that paddle down the bottom like that, it's going to go off. That's quite complicated. And you can have a go at that if you want to, but we're just going to cheat. And what we're going to do is we're just going to say here, instead of moving direction plus 180 each time, we're going to pick a random number between 150 and 180. And what this means is it will kind of oops, let's get rid of that. What it means is it will kind of bounce back in the opposite direction, but it won't bounce back in exactly the opposite direction. Oh no. Put that in the wrong place. So it'll add a bit of randomness to our game, which should make it a little bit more difficult. Let's find out. There we go. Speed that up slightly. There we go. So now already our game is starting to get a little bit more exciting. It's bouncing around in random places. There we go. It's getting a lot more challenging. It's starting to speed up. And there we go. Excellent. And it's starting to go faster and faster and faster. But at the moment, we haven't actually got any scoring. Nothing really happens if it bounces. So we want to start doing a scoring system. But before we do that, let's get rid of this ball speed off here. If you click back onto the data and just untick ball speed, it'll just hide that variable. It doesn't get rid of the variable, it just doesn't display it on the screen anymore. Good. So we've got a ball there, we've got it all working, and now we want to start thinking about creating some scoring. But before we create the scoring, we're going to need to add a new sprite, and we're going to have to get some numbers. If you click on the one that say letters, there we go, and let's find the numbers. And I'm going to use the pixel, or the kind of retro pixel. So we start on a 0 and we add 1 0 pixel. There we go. And let's move him up there for the player. And let's call that player score. Good, that's our player score. And we don't want to keep adding lots of sprites, because that's going to get us lots of zeros all over the screen, or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We don't want lots of sprites. We just want one sprite. And we click on costumes. And let's add more costumes to that same sprite. So let's click on choose from the library. And let's go back down. Right, let's click on those letters. And let's get the next one. So we had a 0, so let's get the 1. Good. And we keep doing that all the way through, from 0 through to number 9. Letters 3. Okay. I'm just going to add one more. I'm going to do 0 to 4, but you can do it all the way through to number 9. There we go. So I've got it from 0 to 4. Let's click back to the first costume. There we go. In fact, leave it on number 4 for the moment. And let's right click on number 4. Stop that. And let's duplicate it. That way, you've got a player costume, a player score, and a computer score without having to copy them all over twice. Let's have a look, computer score. There we go. Okay, good. So we've got a player score and we've got a computer score, but we've got a problem, because here at the start of the game, if we press start, it starts at whatever you've left it at before. So mine happens to be on number 4. We don't want it to start at 4, we want it to start at 0. So for each of those sprites, we create a script. When we press start, we change the costume to the 0 pixel. There we go. And if you drag that from here into that one, it will duplicate it in both of the sprites. So now, hopefully, when I press start, there we go. Our score is set back to 0 for each person. So how do we make it go up? How do we increase the score each time? Well, what we do is we need to say that whenever this ball comes past this paddle here and hits this wall, we need to add the score. If it hits my wall, the player wall, here, then we need to add 1 to the computer score. If it hits this wall here, then we need to add 1 to the player's wall. So if you look at the ball and watch the y coordinate here, we can see that when it gets to, there you go, 230. We know that when it gets to 230, well, minus 230, then if we get to minus 230 on the x, then we know that it's gone past my paddle. So here on the ball, we can say, there we go, if the ball's x position, there we go, if the ball x position is less than minus 230, we know that, there we go, we know that they've scored. So how do we tell the player score here? Oh, sorry, it'll have to be the computer score, because if it's over here, the computer's going to score. So how do we say that if we've scored, you need to change your costume? Well, what we do is we use a broadcast. There it is, a broadcast. And we broadcast a message. And our first message is going to be computer scored. There we go. And there's our message. And all that is like that's that ball shouting out and saying, hello, the computer scored. And what we can do here is we go onto the computer. Here we go, because we need to change his. And we can say, when I receive the message computer scored, all we have to do is we're going to change our costume from this one to the next one. So that if we're here, we go to here. If we're here, we go to here. And here, we go to here. I've just realized I've missed out the number 2. So let's add on the number 2. There's the number 2. And notice the only way for this to make sure it works properly is if all of your numbers are in the right order. So we start on this one. If you score, you go to the next one, then to the next one, then to the next one, then to the next one. So when I receive computer scored, we put our score up by, we change our costume by 1. And we just use next costume. There we go. So when I receive computer scored, next costume. However, your ball is going to be here. As soon as you broadcast that, you're going to have to move your ball back to the center of the screen. So let's go here. Let's move our ball back to the center of the screen. There we go. And let's point it in another random direction. So that it's ready to start the next round. 0 to 360. There we go. So there we go. If the x position is less than minus 230, so it hits this wall, we broadcast computer scored, which should change the computer score by 1. We move our ball back to the middle, back to 0, 0, and then we point in a random direction, ready to have another game. There we go. And we need to do the same for if it's going on the other side. So this time, if the x position is greater than 230, so it's over this side, it's come all the way over here. You can see there it's going all the way over to 230. If the ball position is greater than 230, then we broadcast player scored, and again we go back to the middle, 0, 0, and we point in that random direction. Will it let me duplicate that bit? There we go. Let's get rid of that. So we point in a random direction from 0 to 360. So let's just have a quick look. That one's got the right one on. So I'm going to have to put it on this one. When I receive player scored, change to the next costume. There we go. Good. There we go. And if I remember rightly, we need to add that 2 onto this player scored one as well. So let's go to letters. Let's go to number 2 pixel. Let's move it to the right spot. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So let's have a go. So hopefully now it'll start at 0, and hopefully it will work that if the computer beats me, it will. Oh, that's going to take all day. Let's press that again. Let's see if I can get it so that the computer can score. Look at me. Oh, no, I've missed it. Nope, that's not working. Okay. Ah, there we go. I've made a slight mistake. I've put it, if touching the player bat, if touching the computer bat, I've put the code inside of that if statement. Obviously, if it's touching that wall there, it's probably not going to be touching the player bat. I've just put them in the wrong place. So let's take them out of there. And let's make sure it's inside of that loop, but outside of the if statement. Let's try again. Let's see if that works any better. Nope. Let's just try less than minus 220. Let's try 220. There we go. So I made a slight error there, and it's now working. So what happened there was I'd set it to go too far across. It was never reaching it because it was bouncing off the edge. So now it's doing that, and hopefully if I fire it over to the computer side, when that works, let's just test the other one. Let's get that firing across. Let's try and beat the computer. Excellent. So there you go. So I'm scoring. If it hits mine, I score. If the computer scores, it scores. Oops. Now we've got a slight error here. If you notice, what's happening here is every time that they score, it's getting faster and faster and faster. So it's going to be near enough impossible for us to actually win a round. So what do we need to do there? Well, every time either the player scores or the computer scores, we need to reset that speed variable, that ball speed. We need to reset it to the original 4. So we can do this. The easiest way to do that is do it on the ball. So there we go. If they score, go back to the start, point in that direction, and let's reset the ball speed to 4. There we go. And that now, hopefully, will mean that each time you score, it goes back to being slow rather than going super speed again. Yep, we're speeding up. We're speeding up. Let's just let him win. There you go. And we're going slow again. So that's perfect. And there you have a fully working version of the Pong game. So where can we go from here? Well, you've got 2 options once you've done that. You could either get it so that it changes the difficulty. So you could change it so that you had a setting at the start of the game so that the ball starts off at a different speed, or maybe change it so that the computer, when the computer bat moves here, it might change by 5 or -5 or -6. The more it changes by, the faster that bat is going to move and track that ball. So that could be used to set a different setting. You also might want to do a start menu. That would be a good idea, so that when your game loads, it pops up with a start menu rather than going straight into the game. Or you could do different size bats, so that every time you hit the ball, your bat gets a little bit smaller. There's lots of options. And you could have a limit. At the moment, when it gets to 9, after 9, it just resets it to 0. So you could have it so that when the first person to reach 9, it then stops the game and displays game over and says either the player or the computer is the winner. So have a go at those, and good luck.